Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Town Board of the Town of Austin work session and special meeting for Tuesday, November 9th. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Councilmember Meyer.
Present.
Councilmember Shaw.
Present.
Councilmember Feldman.
Present.
And Supervisor Levenberg.
Here I am. So we're just going to start with one resolution, and then I'll do a few announcements before we go into our work session. So.
Okay. Personnel, Town Court, return from leave of absence. Be it so resolved that the Town Board hereby grants Ms. Fernanda Lilly's request to return to work from her leave of absence effective November 20th, 2019, and be it further resolved that Ms. Lilly's employment shall be subject to the applicable time period commensurate with her USCIS employment authorization.
Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. So with that, may I have a motion to adjourn the special meeting into work session?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. So we have a full work session agenda this evening, and before we get into the meat of it, I'd like to start with some announcements. I'm sorry, it's vegan month. It's vegan, so I shouldn't have said the meat of it. Okay, I'm sorry. Anyway, all right, we have tomorrow, Wednesday, November 20th, from 12:30 to 2:30, Westchester County is offering another training session for residents to learn the strategies and skills they could use to survive if an active shooter event occurs in their place of work or other public venue. Known as Civilian Response to Active Shooter Events, CRAZE, the training class will be offered at SUNY Purchase, 735 Anderson Hill Road in Purchase. The training is free and open to the public, but advanced registration is required on Eventbrite. The lecture-style training will be held in the college's Coral Hall. Parking is in the West 2 lot. Westchester County Police have also provided CRAZE training to many school district employees and other members of law enforcement who have then brought the training back to their local communities. In addition, County Police have worked closely with educators, staff, and students to enhance the prevention of and response to an active shooter event in school buildings where county police officers serve as school resource officers. Here at Ossining Town and Village Hall, we also held active shooter training for staff in this building yesterday, and there are others planned for our other buildings as well. This is a tough but unfortunately necessary training that allows us to all be a little more prepared if the unimaginable ever happens. We learned that being prepared and making a plan under normal circumstances is the best way to ensure your own safety and the safety of others during an active shooter situation or any other evacuation. I encourage anyone who's available tomorrow to take advantage of the county's free training. Come one, come all to the next Tarrytown Ukulele Jam. Also tomorrow, Wednesday, November 20th from 6:30 to 8:30, not in Tarrytown, here in Ossining at Sing Sing Kill Brewery. Bring down your ukulele and your singing voice, and they'll provide the sheet music. It's free to participate. And as mentioned before, it's World Vegan Month. Learn about the many benefits of plant-based nutrition from Dr. Michael E. Ford's presentation as part of the Austin Public Library's Health and Wellness Series in partnership with New York Presbyterian Hudson Valley Hospital. That's this Thursday, November 21st. Be sure to RSVP to James Trapasso at the Austin Library, 941-2416. J. Trapasso, that's Trapass as in Sam, O, at WLS as in Sam, mail.org. After Dr. Ford's presentation, pretty sure you'll be stocking up on those tofurkeys for Thanksgiving. Also Thursday evening, November 21st, is a wine tasting fundraiser for the Baker Collier Christmas Cheer Fund at Grace Hall, formerly Eagles, from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. It's $20 a person, which includes the wine tasting and appetizers. There'll also be a 50-50 raffle and basket of cheer raffle. I hope you'll consider attending to support one of Austin's oldest organizations. Join in for some holiday cheer and support Crossover Yoga Project in this last of their fundraising Poses to Pints event for 2019 on Sunday, November 24th from 11:30 to 12:30 at Sing Sing Kill Brewery. Empower marginalized girls with an Oh Mama Amazing yoga class and a refreshing brew. Limited tickets available at SSKB or on Eventbrite. Since the crossover yoga project's onset in 2015, they've empowered over 3,800 marginalized girls through trauma-informed yoga, art, and mindfulness curriculum. You may remember Alicia Simpson from Mind, Body, Spirit Asaning, and she's participated quite a few times, and she's absolutely terrific. So come one, come all. Galata House is collecting donations for its 5th annual Turkeys for Thanksgiving. You can drop off a donated turkey at St. Anne's Church Rectory between 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. or at Deli Bagel in the Arcadian between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. through the end of this week. Galata House will be distributing donated turkeys and also hosting a free Thanksgiving dinner on Sunday, November 24th at St. Anne's School Gym for anyone in need. For more information, to recommend families to invite, or to get involved and volunteer to help serve or give out turkeys, please contact Galata House at Galata, that's Gullota, at Galata House, House, at gmail.com, or the St. Anne's Rectory at 941-2556. The census is hiring. You can apply online at 2020census.gov/jobs to take part in the 2020 census. And they really need people. So the great news is that employment with the Census Bureau offers great pay, which is paid weekly, flexible hours, and paid training. For questions or help filling out an application, please call 1-855-JOB-2020. Finally, we received word today from the New York State Department of Transportation that they have scheduled some road work along Route 9A in our area this weekend. Along the distance from the Stormytown Road exit in Ossining south to the 117 exit in Pleasantville, the DOT will be completing median guardrail repairs on Saturday and Sunday from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., weather permitting, of course. You can expect lane closures and delays in this section of Route 9A over the weekend, so avoid the area if you can. If you have any questions, you can contact our office at 762-6001, and we can relay those questions to the field team at DOT. Thanks so much to our colleagues in the Village of Briarcliff for their call to action to get the attention of the state for these much-needed repairs along Route 9A, as well as help from our state and county legislators. And now, on to the, unless, does anybody else have, my colleagues have any announcements or anything? Okay, on to our work session. Up first, we have Pete Connolly, to whom congratulations are in order for his recent endorsement by the people to lead us in 2020 as our new elected highway superintendent. Tonight, you are here as our appointed head of both superintendent of cemeteries and highway, and luckily, you're going to deliver 2 departmental reports to us in one, so we get 2 for the price of 1. We're very excited about that.
Good evening.
Hi.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
Which one would you like first?
Whichever one you want to get.
Okay.
Whichever hat you're wearing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about our favorite subject, sewer lift stations. How's that?
Okay.
We'll start off with
I
that
love
one.
that subject.
Which we have 13, by the way.
Okay.
But,
Lucky 13. Love it.
A new standby generator was installed at the Parker Bale lift station that's in Crotonville on the S-turn. And in September, I met with Water and Sewer Superintendent Andy Teese and a representative of Lindstar Engineering at the North State and Parker Bale lift stations for initial review of replacing those generators at those stations. So we'll be giving you that information shortly. New pumps and controls were installed at the Foreign Court lift station. That's in Deerfield. And along with Andy, we're looking into a SCADA system. It's a supervisory control and data acquisition, which gathers real-time data and is used to monitor and control the equipment, such as the lift station. So we could really, long-term, do that out of the office and see what's going on at each station.
And that's just so, I mean, that's something that they have in place right now in the water department.
Yes,
for-
yeah, they do.
Right, and they can
Yeah.
see what's happening with all of the different water towers.
Yep,
right?
Andy has it in his office, the distribution guys have it, and up the filter plant also.
I think
So-
you can even get it on your phone. I'm pretty sure, but I'm not positive. You can. see
You
something.
probably could, yeah. So in August, we replaced about 950 feet of guide rail on Croton Dam Road, Narragansett Avenue, Stormytown Road, and Old Albany Post Road. So hopefully that's going to be phase 1 of a two-year project. I'd like to finish up the rest next year. Studio Hill Road and Haymont Terrace were resurfaced in October. Both Before the resurfacing, about 450 feet of drainage was installed by the Highway Department. We were getting ice conditions on the roadway during the winter, so we wanted to get that done before the paving was done. So hopefully that's going to work and make for a better street. Bike lane striping and signage was installed on Hawks Avenue. In fact, on my way in about 6 o'clock, because we had a large tree come down on Albany Post Road tonight, they were there finishing up the bike symbols on Hawks. So North State Road will also be included with bike lanes shortly, I hope. Right, Victoria? All right. Okay, she says yes. At the highway garage, over the summer, we did a lot of masonry repairs and painted the exterior of the garage. Ran out of time this year, so we're looking to paint the office trailer maybe next spring. Leaf pickup season is in full swing. We're close to completing 2 full passes. So we will be starting the 3rd pass probably by the end of the week. And we began picking up leaves the 3rd week of October, and we'll continue well into December as long as the weather permits and the leaves are out on the road. So our road salt and liquid calcium supplies were both topped off, so they're both full, getting ready for the winter months. And we have 5 trucks ready if we get a little blurb like they did upstate, a little, 2 inches last night. So all highway workers attended the confined space and trenching course that was given in September. And just last week, all the operators attended the safety during snow and ice removal course, which was held in Carmel. And as you mentioned, Madam Supervisor, we attended the 9A improvement seminar or get together over there at the county office building last week. So some of these projects I'd like to, as usual, thank Town Engineer Paul Fraioli and Water Superintendent Andy Teese, who helped move some of the projects along. So
Before you get into the cemetery, could you just mention, because we've had a couple of calls of late of, brushes picked up at a certain time, or I hear that.
okay.
And also how much bulk garbage you can put
It's
out.
a 3 by 3 in size, 3 feet long by 3 foot wide, bundled with rope, not wire, so we could
This is for brush?
brush.
Okay, for
Yes,
brush,
yeah.
right.
And brush is usually Fridays. Sometimes if Kevin Moore, our foreman, realizes there's a lot of brush out there, he may send the crew out a day earlier if possible. So if you could have it out, Thursday and or Friday. But usually most of the time it's on Fridays. Okay. Bag leaves are also on Fridays, except this time of year when we're going through with the leaf pickup. That can be any day of the week depending on the leaf schedule. They have to be, no plastic bags, have to be in paper bags. Yeah, okay. So on
And then what about for the bulk items?
bulk trash?
Yeah.
Oh, bulk trash is your second garbage day.
Right, but you
Okay.
can only put out, what is it, 4 yards, I think?
It's up to about 4 yards.
a time.
Yeah, and again, you put it out the next week. The guys will pick it up, suburban carting.
But if it isn't picked up, then you need to take it back.
Yes.
You
yeah.
don't just leave it out until it gets picked up.
Well, you shouldn't put out more than hopefully the 4 cubic yards anyway.
Yes, okay,
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so we don't want to.
Yes.
Okay, so.
Do you want to just mention our plans for next year with the calendar and the app and all that kind of stuff? Just
Sure. Yeah, we've been working with, through Steamboat Westchester, we got a very favorable deal to participate in an app that would help with refuse and recycling, especially helping with some of the recycling portions of that. And it's something that you can get on your phone and on your computer. And so instead of sending out the big mailing, this year we're going to be sending out a little mailing and directing people to the website where they can print out a calendar if they want a printed calendar. Otherwise, they can just go on their phone, plug in their address, and they can get their information updated all the time. Plus, there'll be notices that go out if there are ever, any, for whatever reason, any emergencies or any changes in scheduling. And it also directs you to other resources if you are looking to get rid of other articles that you need, if there's any kind of refuse or recycling information that you need, you can get a lot of resources through this app. So we're trying to reduce costs for our outgoing mailing and make it easier for people through their phones, since most people now do have smartphones to get information at their fingertips.
That's right. Yep.
And was there something else from that you wanted to share? No, and we're going to continue to work with the people through Sustainable Westchester who've been helping roll this out in a number of municipalities in Westchester to make sure that we can offer the best information to those in unincorporated who whose trash we're responsible for and recycling.
Yep. Okay. On to the cemetery. There have been 15 tournaments so far this year. We continue to have the broken monuments, usually in the older part of the section. The old marble monuments repaired by the preservation company. He's there, actually he's starting up again tomorrow. The retaining wall between section 2 and 3, that's the fireman's circle, and 3 is above, has been repaired. We shut the water off because of the cold weather to the outside spigots and also down at Sparta. So that's off for the season. And the men continue to mulch and pick up the leaves. And there was a pre-construction meeting, walkthrough, held on the 12th with our architect. And I think there were 3 bidders that came to take a look at the rehab of the superintendent's cottage. So hopefully we get started with that next spring.
All right.
Okay?
Any questions for Mr. Connolly? Any questions? You're so extraordinary. That was great.
Okay,
Great
thank you.
report. And how are all those new trucks?
Which ones?
All of them.
All the new trucks? We're still waiting on one for January.
waiting on one.
We're still waiting on one.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thanks so much. But I know I have to say, that's one area that we haven't really been hearing a lot of complaints. And you actually didn't mention that. You want to just talk about the rehab, because you did rehab that one truck and save us a lot of money? I don't think you mentioned that, and I know you like that.
Actually, Gary and Chuck, we rehabbed 2 that have permanent salt spreaders on now. Salt saves lives, but it's corrosive too. So 2 of those bodies were rotting through, and then I think we have enough dump trucks on hand that we just mounted the spreaders permanently on there. And so they're ready to go. There's 2 out of the 5 that are ready to go in case we get a little something right now. So, yeah, so we saved some money on that one. Okay.
Thanks so much for making sure that our roads are safe, our cemeteries are looking in tip-top shape, and working with everybody together, I think has been really great. Did you want to talk about that?
Can I make another comment too, as long as we're talking about it? Just because Pete mentioned how everybody did the confined space and the trenching training this year. So the trenching training was the first time that we've done that in the town. They've been doing it in the village for a while because they have more occasion to do it than we do, certainly. But we realized we really need to be buying our own set of that equipment. At the same time, we went to New York State Municipal Workers' Compensation Alliance. They held like sort of their annual meeting, and we were given a dividend check, which is going to pay for a large part of the trenching equipment that we need. So we want to say thank you to all of our employees for taking their safety so seriously, because we actually just got our quote back from Workers' Comp today. We're going down about $15,000 in premium this year, which is substantial. So thank you to Pete and all of his hardworking employees and peers for doing such a good job.
That training does pay off, so very grateful. Okay, great. So next up, we have Diane Alden, and Diane's coming to us from the Friends of the Old Croton Aqueduct. I'm going to say, I don't know exactly which hat you're wearing, but Diane has been intimately involved in some of the main issues related to the unique area in Crotonville. Well, it's really in Cortland, but access through Crotonville. And she's been a true leader in finding solutions to some of them by working collaboratively with all the municipalities involved, which includes Cortland, Croton, Ossining, and actually Newcastle, although they are not usually that involved, but as well as the state DEC, law enforcement, county law enforcement, state law enforcement, and tonight she's here to share with us some information about the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference Stewardship Program, the program's successes elsewhere in our region, and how a similar stewardship program might be helpful here for the unique area, and how and why the town of Austining should consider supporting it. As well, I think you're going to give a little bit of a highlight of what some of the issues are
Right.
at the unique area. Am I right?
Oh, can you hear me
So much,
okay?
Diane.
Right.
And Daria Gregg is in the audience for support. She's also been very involved in this. So thank you.
So this year, I started with a colleague in Croton, a new friends group called Friends of the Croton Gorge Unique Area. So that's my hat for
Oh, that's your
today.
hat. Okay, sorry. Wrong
Yeah,
hat.
so I'm on the board of the Friends of the Old Croton Aqueduct, but now we've started a new group called the Friends of the Croton Gorge Unique Area. So I did this on the fly, so let's hope it works out okay. So this is the Croton River, right by the Croton Gorge Unique Area, photographs taken in 2012, and another one in 2012. It's a really beautiful area if nobody's been there, if you haven't been there. 2018, riverbank, early spring. I took this photo this spring, April 2019. Those are wild leeks on the riverside. These are some beautiful wildflowers growing on the riverbanks. So I did a little research and I found out that this was purchased by New York State Department of DEC in December of 1978 in order to secure it from adverse development. And it was initially used by local residents as a swimming hole and a place to hike and fish, but then it got discovered by word of mouth and social media and residents in the larger metropolitan area. So although many individuals and families visiting the area have been eager to join this beautiful natural setting and treated it accordingly, other people have engaged in activities detrimental to the ecology. So there were no regulations promulgated, no regular monitoring or management, the area gradually became subject to terrible overuse, severe littering, with overnight camping, fire making, alcohol use, and loud music being played, all of which were legal, except for the littering. So here's an improvised grill, more evidence of fire making. Littering became a very serious problem, and you could see that a lot of drinking was taking place along the riverside. Local residents routinely cleaned it. We had one neighbor who just went down there every weekend with her dog and put little bags on him. Anyway, the next slide demonstrates a resident really daunted by the trash. He went down to try to help clean up, and he was, oh no. So a task force was formed by local residents in 2006, so this is going way back, following a drowning. There have been a number of drownings there over the years. The current is very swift, but the river can look really not at all dangerous, but the currents are unseen. So after a lot of the residents complained, they formed a task force in 2006, and it was chaired by Linda Puglisi and the supervisor of Austining at the time. Suzanne Donnelly, I think, went, and then eventually Dana got involved. So they've been active up until the present time trying to figure out what to do. The DEC was asked to change the regulations, and it took a number of years, but finally they agreed to take the steps to change the regulations to prohibit overnight camping, the possession of alcohol, the making of fires, and the playing of loud music. So swimming was never prohibited, but no supervision was provided nor planned, and public hearing was held in the Austining Library. I helped organize that, and the regulations were changed in 2016, but there weren't any plans for enforcement, really. So with no entity accepting responsibility for the enforcement, the posted rules, the DEC did come and work very hard with the neighbors to post rules all along the area in both English and Spanish, but the visitors, a lot of the visitors have ignored the rules, and more people kept coming. So in response to this growing situation, the municipalities of Croton, Ossining, and Cortland applied to the DEC for funding to provide resources for both educational activities and enforcement of the regulations. But although there was some back and forth correspondence, I don't know really what went wrong, but the funding request was denied. So in the spring of 2019, the number of visitors was steady. By the way, I live right there, so that's why I've been so involved. But not overwhelming. But then there was this terrible hot spell in July of 2019, and the area became completely inundated. I've heard that there were 400 visitors, but I think that was exaggerated. But on hot summer days, there were lots and lots of
400
people.
visitors at a time,
Yeah,
on a weekend, like on a day, in a day.
in a particular
Not
day.
over the course of the
According
summer.
to the county police guy there, he said he counted 400 people.
Yeah, I
in
know,
one
but-
day.
Yeah. Anyway, many of them were not following one or more of the regulations, and illegal parking continued to be a problem. So in the summer of 2019, a meeting was convened that included local municipal officials, law enforcement personnel, as well as representatives of the DEC, and it was announced that there would be another formal request for funding, which was done in writing. It was drafted by Janine King, the manager of Croton, following that meeting, and a response letter was sent by the DEC stating that the department would evaluate a long-term stewardship agreement and funding to provide stewards during the summer of 2020. They said they would evaluate it. So given the severity of the situation, a group of very concerned community members established this new informal group, the Friends of the Croton Gorge Unique Area, and we resolved to take a leadership role in tackling the situation. Dana was there when I made the announcement. The Friends currently include residents of Croton and Cortland, as well as Ossining, who live on both sides of the river, and have been joined by some visitors to the area, including some residents of Ossining who like to go out to the riverside, and some from the larger metropolitan area. It's another interesting story. There are currently over 100 members of this group who've signed on. So I will say that in the village of Croton, there was a lot of negative feelings and they have a Facebook page, this informal group, Facebook group, and there was a lot of negative stuff going on. And one of the the administrator of that Facebook page, Marie Considine, said to the Croton residents, if you're concerned about this, you need to do something about it, come to a meeting. So she corralled all of the people were arguing with each other and calling each other names and complaining about the visitors, and Marie just pulled them all together, and they had meetings, and they formed an advocacy group. So now they're focused in a very positive direction. So I have to give her a lot of credit. So anyway, we decided that based on the experience of other areas experiencing similar problems, the Friends requested that the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference set up a stewardship program this coming season at the Unique Area. They have done this in other places. They have the experience, they have the expertise, and good record of successes. So they agreed to set up the program at the Unique Area with a catch. We had to give them provided that the required funding, $36,000, had to be guaranteed by January. So not willing to risk the possibility that the requested funding from the DEC would not arrive in time, the Friends, this group of us, we have provided the guarantee, and the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference accepted the guarantee. So they're going to do it. It's going to happen. The Friends arranged for the program coordinator of the stewardship program to attend the task force meeting that was convened in October of this year to make a presentation about the stewardship program. The meeting was attended by the towns of Ossining, and that, in other words, Dana was there with other people, and Cortland as well as the village of Croton officials, local police officials, and many community members, a lot of them. The presentation was well received, and the officials agreed to the plan presented by the Trail Conference. So at that meeting, Linda Puglisi announced that funds had been set aside to contract with the county police to patrol at the roadside on weekends to manage the parking and to assist with enforcement, building on the procedures first established in the summer of 2019. So in July, after we had that horrible situation, Linda got the county police to come and be at the entrance to manage the parking, but there were some really terrific county police officers who were willing to do enforcement down at the riverside, and they even worked a little bit as trail stewards and handed out garbage bags and gloves, and they did a wonderful job, really. So preliminary conversations have taken place between the Trail Conference and the DEC to make the formal arrangements that will permit the Trail Conference to set up a stewardship program at the area. DEC officials have told me that broad community support of the stewardship program, as evidenced by donations for that purpose, will be helpful in their efforts to secure significant funding for the stewardship program. So this is what they put up on their website. In their first season, they will educate and engage visitors at using leave no trace principles, as well as the area's rules and regulations. The stewards will work on site from late May through Columbus Day weekend. 3 uniformed stewards will be there at the trailhead and the parking area, which is right on the old Croton Aqueduct State Park. And on weekend, what they'll do is 1 will stay at the trailhead and 2 will go down to the riverside and interact with the visitors. So we did a little experiment on Labor Day weekend. We set up 2 volunteers and we signed them up with the DEC so they were legitimate, covered by workman's comp and all of that. And they did a little trial run of engaging with the visitors to the area, and they had an incredibly positive experience. 9 of the people who came just came to visit. They came with their coolers and ready to have a nice time in the river, but when the people talked to them at the trailhead and asked whether they would like to be good ambassadors for the river, they signed up. They gave us their information, their contact information. They took garbage bags and gloves and they went down and they cleaned the riverside down to the last shard of glass and bottle caps. So it bodes well. Now, this was not one of those great big, terribly hot days when there were hundreds of people there, but it just seemed like a good idea, and it looks like it's going to be, we're hoping that it will be effective. So they're going to start their training in early May, and they will be bilingual so that they can educate and engage with both English and Spanish-speaking people. And the idea is to set up a different ethos at the riverside. It's not just to educate them and say, don't do this and don't do that, but they really want to engage with them and get them to appreciate the beauty of the area and to try to conserve it and preserve it. So that's their mission. And that's what happened that one experimental day. So these are the fundraising activities that we've engaged in. So far, we've raised $3,000 from individual community members. T-Town's mounting an art show. If anybody knows an artist or photographer that wants to donate a painting or photograph, all of the proceeds will go to the stewardship fund. T-Town's just stepped up and said they wanted to support this. The Friends of the Aqueduct are having a board meeting on Thursday, and they're planning to contribute $2,000. We haven't voted on it yet, but that's the plan, at least. And look at this, last news, hot off the press. Cortland Town Board's meeting tonight, and they are planning to say yes to a resolution to contribute $10,000. So we're close to having a third of what we need. So I came up with these as the benefits to the Ossining community. I don't know if I've thought it through as well as I could have, but we're hoping that with education engagement by the stewards, the Ossining residents who want to come and enjoy the area will be able to enjoy it better, because those visitors engaging in inappropriate and frankly dangerous behavior will be discouraged from coming to the area, because the stewards will be able to call for enforcement as needed if they see people violating the rules. So we're hoping that it will be safer for those who want to come and enjoy the area appropriately. So we're hoping that that will then reduce the volume as the word gets out that these rules are being enforced, and there is a different ethos down at the river. And so we're hoping that in turn will reduce the number of cars parking in our local streets and parks. Austining residents living along Old Albany Post Road and Quaker Bridge Road and the other little roads around there, we're hoping they'll experience less vehicular and pedestrian traffic. And then we're hoping that the tensions between the visitors and between the visitors and the neighbors, we're hoping that that will be reduced. Some of the Austining visitors have been resenting some of the people who are coming from out of town, from Manhattan and the Bronx and Peekskill and Yonkers, and they say, oh, it's those guys and those guys. And so we're hoping that with the stewards, the situation will be different. So that's my pitch. I'm hoping that you'll vote to contribute maybe 2,000, maybe 3,600. That would be 10% of the total. But whatever you're willing to contribute will be really appreciated. So that's my pitch.
All right, fantastic. Thank you. So I just wanted to add, I wanted to just, can you just go back to the slide where you said something about nobody?
Oh, wait a minute, I forgot. One more slide.
Yes, it is good to get out and volunteer for the cleanup of the old Croton Aqueduct. And I did have an opportunity to go down to the unique area with Croton historian Mark Cheshire and also Mayor Brian Pugh from Croton, and take a look at all that was happening down there. And that was in May on I Love My Park Day, which I encourage everybody to come and help and lend a helping hand. And it's a great event. You get to engage with the community, people who are caretakers of the community, and Diane has done a fantastic job leading that effort for many years. So thank you, and it's a huge, huge, huge undertaking and a huge turnout, and it's just great.
So you wanted to see another slide?
I wanted you to just go back to the one, because there was a slide that said nobody wanted to take responsibility for enforcement. And so I just wanted to kind of clarify, that's not really the case. The case is that the unique area is DEC or state-owned land that's regulated as forested land. It's in the middle of a suburb. And as a result, this is why those regulations about fires and camping and eating and all those sorts of things weren't actually promulgated for this property originally, and why all the communities had to fight very hard to get those regulations promulgated, because it's forest land. And so if it's in the middle of a forest, that's one thing. But if when it's in the middle of, the edge of New York City suburb, it's another thing completely. So I think finally the DEC recognized that and maybe made the exception for this piece. The other thing-
Actually, Dana, it turned out that
That
other
they had-
unique areas also had different regulations. So the DEC was not completely forthcoming when they first didn't want to change the regulations. So it's been a long haul getting them to be cooperative.
Right. And I'll just say, I started working on this project when I was working for Assemblywoman Galiff, so I was familiar with some of these issues from the perspective of working from, state legislators' office to try to get the changes made that were necessary. But even with those changes, that really wasn't enough. And especially with the onslaught of social media, we've seen a great increase in attendance to this area, and it's really impacted quality of life for neighbors, but it's also impacted the area that was supposed to originally, as you said, Diane, be protected so that people could enjoy it. But with over enjoyment comes less protection for the land. And so there's been a lot of erosion. There's, just a lot of destruction of the land, not to mention all the stuff that's going into the Hudson River because of litter, et cetera. So, we're very grateful for all the many, many volunteers that have come forward. In Ossining, the issues in particular in Ossining are really, we get a lot of complaints on these weekends when it's really hot. And even during the week when people are flocking to this spot, and we found this year is, people are parking on Riverview Farm Road, people are parking at Gerlach Park, they're parking on Waterview, they're parking on Old Albany Post Road Extension, and it's making it difficult, and not only for safety reasons for people to access to get in and out of their own streets, but also people are sort of doing untoward things because they're spending a lot of time down at the park. There's no bathroom facilities, and so people are kind of doing things that are rather inappropriate for what we might like to see in our neighborhoods. So the stewardship program, which I don't think you really talked about, has been very successful. And other places like Breakneck Ridge and other areas where they've seen that even though the stewards don't have enforcement ability, they are able to call, and they have like a direct line to DEC officers who can come and enforce. And the people who are supposed to enforce the law are the DEC, what is their exact,
Well, there are two
York State
entities.
Park.
There's the DEC,
Park
the
Police.
ECOs, the Environmental Conservation Officers. In 2016 and 2017, they came periodically, first to educate people that there were new rules, and then to do some ticketing when the rules were not being enforced. This was a great group of people, very impressive. I used to have them park in my driveway so they wouldn't take the parking spots up for the residents, for the visitors. But then this year, the DEC commissioner decided that these people were really supposed to be focused on, really major problems like illegal dumping and wildlife problems. So they reassigned they said that the forest rangers should be, it's the forest rangers should be assigned. So they assigned the rangers, but they came on occasion when the DEC.
Okay, that's fine. So anyway, the point is that there's the state is responsible for enforcing on the actual property, whether it's the forest rangers, the ECOs, or whomever, and they don't really have the resources because they're spread so thin among all the parks
right.
and all the forested properties and all the DEC-owned land throughout the state. And even in this region, they don't have a lot of officers to commit. So what's happened is that Croton has to, have a lot of their resources for this area. People access it from Silver Lake as well, and from the other side of the river. And then Town of Cortland utilizes Westchester County and State Police. So they've been engaged, and then our police have been engaged in terms of parking for the areas because people can access it from the Old Croton Aqueduct through Gerlach Park. And that's how you can, get to the property. So, what we've seen in Ossining is really an impact, again, for our residents in that area, just in terms of quality of life issues. So, again, we've been committed, and we've been, working with the group to, in whatever way we can, to pitch in from the perspective of where we have enforcement authority, which is really mostly parking at this point more than anything. But if in fact the stewardship program is a way for us to reduce the crazy amount of people who are going to the area, we think that it's worth a shot because we're hoping that it'll then have a positive impact on our piece of this puzzle here on Ossining. And ultimately, there are a couple of other things that the state has done at other areas that are like the unique area and other parts, other forested lands. And I personally think that some of those other ways where they permit a certain number of people to be able to use that spot are other options that need to be considered pending how the stewardship program works out. So Diane was here to explain some of the issues and how Ossining might help to roll back some of those problems by making a small investment. I see that town of Cortland has, committed $10,000. I think that we were thinking, in a smaller amount of resources and, than that. So, I just wanted the board to consider that as part of our budget conversations. And I appreciate, Diane, you coming out, to talk about that. So we can talk about that more when we're talking more about the budget, but I wanted you guys to have that perspective. Okay, because I don't think we actually included did we include an amount? We did not include an amount yet, but, we're hoping to get to some number. And
I would like to just add one more thing, which is that because the unique area is actually only in the town of Cortland, the county police are authorized to do enforcement there.
Oh, okay.
So, and that was actually in the written response from the DEC when the request was made for the rules to be changed. The original request, the towns and the villages requested authorization to do enforcement, and the answer from the commissioner was, you are authorized. But in fact, it's only state police and county police who are authorized to enforce the regulations in the unique area just because of jurisdictional rules. So last summer, the Cortland police, I'm sorry, the county police really stepped up and did some enforcement along with the rangers and accompanied them. And I'm hoping that they will collaborate and coordinate with the DEC enforcement people so that we really have a really good, that's something that I'm going to be working on, is coordination, so that there'll be a tighter and very timely response to any infractions. So the fact that the county police have been willing to do that, I actually sent a letter of commendation to the police commissioner just to encourage that behavior, because they were really good.
I mean, I thank you to the county police. It's not just that they're willing to, it's that the town of Cortland is actually paying them to. So let's just be clear. The town of Cortland has made a decision to commit their resources to do that. Okay. So in any case, I just want to try to wrap this up. Diane, we're probably not going to make a decision right this second, but we'll talk a little bit more about it as we talk a little bit more about what we're going to have in our what's in our proposed budget. So again, I think that we should consider some amount. As mentioned, this is not actually in the town of Ossining. However, certainly we know that we are all impacted, and we've all have in the past committed resources to try and address this problem. And certainly we know that people who do live in Ossining do also benefit from this space as well. So with that, I thank you very much. And
Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
okay, and we're now going to move into our next presentation by our fantastic budget director, Maddie Zahach. This is our annual presentation on the 2020 budget. Maddie, our Deputy Comptroller Dale Ferreira, and all of our department heads have been hard at work preparing next year's budget. As it stands now, looking to squeeze as much as we can out of every tax dollar to continue to deliver quality services to our residents and maintain our infrastructure while still curbing increases to your tax bill. Before I hand the microphone over to Maddie, I want to share some highlights of my message to the community regarding the tentative budget for 2020. So 2019 has been a very exciting year in the town of Ossining and marks a personal milestone for me, with this year being this end of my second term as town supervisor in a town where I have called home for 23 years. I've learned so much about this amazing community during my time as supervisor, and I continue to be so impressed by our department heads, staff, and my colleagues on the town board. Truly, a day does not go by that I don't see one of these incredible public servants go above and beyond for a resident in the town, or look for new ways to ensure that we provide the best services for all of you. I'm proud to work on this team and share all we have in store for 2020. The town continues to run a very tight ship. This is our 9th out of 9 years in a row that we plan to stay under the tax cap. But still, we have many new programs and improvements to infrastructure planned in the coming year, including a new comprehensive plan, food scrap recycling program, townwide reappraisal, expanded events like Food Truck Fridays and Summer Concert Series, community-wide equity task force, improvements to our parks, restoration of McCarthy Drive, renovations to the superintendent's cottage at Dale Cemetery, just to name a few. So how do we do all this and stay under the tax cap, you ask? Well, many of these projects are funded by grants, debt service, fund balance, and other creative ways to ensure that these much-needed improvements or expansion of town services do not overburden the taxpayers. I will let Maddie elaborate more, but I know I speak for the town board and all of our town staff when I say that we look forward to 2020 as we continue to serve the public to the best of our abilities. So, thank you, and onward.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm hoping to have my voice through the entirety of this presentation. So if I need a coughing break, Victoria is like well versed. She's gonna pick right up where I left off. So this evening we're discussing the 2020 tentative budget, sometimes called the supervisor's budget. So this is something that was filed the day before Halloween. So the board has had this, as well as the public, for a couple of weeks now to take a look at. The calendar is the same as always. This is going to be the budget for January 1, 2020 through December 31, 2020. Usually in about early to mid-August is when we start doing department head forms. So basically we have a packet that we change a little bit every year, sort of asking the departments what their goals are, what's working in your department, what's not working. If you had an unlimited budget, what sort of a program would you offer that you've seen some of your peers in other municipalities offer that has, been successful and that the residents have enjoyed. So we sort of gather all that information, and then we put all of it into our accounting system, and we sit down with all the department heads for the first time, just myself, supervisor, Victoria, and our comptroller and deputy comptroller. And so we put all that information in, we sort of do whatever adjustments we feel are appropriate, and then that's the budget that's filed with the town clerk on October 30th, and so that's what's the tentative budget. So right now that's what we're working off of. The town board has actually not had a chance to meet with department heads yet. That's going to begin tomorrow and on Friday, and we have 2 more that we need to reschedule at some point. But the plan is to adopt it at the December 10th legislative session, so that's a bit flexible. We have until December 20th, so we do have another week and a half after that point should we need it. So the town budget is, compared to the village budget, certainly much smaller. So the town budget is about $16 million, but it's a lot more complicated because we have a lot more funds. So the town general fund is the one that everyone who lives in the town of Ossining pays into, and we'll get into how that's broken down in a moment. As far as the unincorporated area, this board is the direct form of government for the unincorporated area, and so they directly pay for police services, highway, building, planning, zoning, and code enforcement, and then special districts. So these are mostly funds paid into by small groups, usually in the unincorporated area, but we also have the ambulance district, which everybody in the town of Ossining pays into except for those in Briarcliff Manor that provides emergency medical services, and then Dale Cemetery, which is a fund but a non-taxing fund, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit. So what we're going to talk about first is the general fund. So that's the town of Ossining taxes. That's going to be less than 3% of the average homeowner's tax bill that comes. So as we know, the school district is the lion's share of that, usually around 65%. Your town taxes, Westchester County, depending on what districts you fall in there, and then your local municipality. So like I mentioned, this board controls the unincorporated town. If they're not in the unincorporated, they either pay Village of Briarcliff or Village of Ossining taxes, which is the other 15 to 25% of your bill. So what do you get in the town general? Well, you get a whole lot of stuff. This is where most of our operations are located. So we have our court, as well as our parking bureau. We have the administration, so the supervisor's office, the town board, budget, and grant administration, our receiver of taxes, our assessment function, as well as the Board of Assessment Review, our town clerk, the elections, our senior services, so our Meals on Wheels, our art and dance classes for our seniors, our town parks. We have 7 town parks?
Far more than that. 6? No.
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 We have Ryder, Gerlach, Cedar Lane, Engel, Buck Johnson, Sally Swope, and Lit. 7? Yeah. So also out of the town general fund, we pay for the rent on this very room, as well as our offices upstairs, the town court, and our senior nutrition program. And it's also where we pay for the concert series and fireworks. So what does it cost you? Well, for the average town of Ossining homeowner, so that's somebody in a combination of the Village of Briarcliff, Village of Ossining, and unincorporated town, pay about $331 a year for all of those services. I think that's a pretty good deal. And to look at it a different way, here are all the things that you get for your $331. So as you can see, the lion's share of that is obviously benefits. So this is the health, dental, vision, and retirement system funding for most of our employees. So it's basically all of the employees who don't work for the highway department, the cemetery, or the building department. And as you can see, most of our departments are pretty tiny. If you had a chance to look at the budget, most of our departments have between 3 and 5 full-time equivalent employees. The town runs at about 65 employees year-round full-time equivalent. So we're pretty small. So benefits are a significant part of any organization, and we're not exempt from that. So now let's talk about the unincorporated area. So again, between 15 and 25% of that tax bill if you do live in the unincorporated area of the town. If you live in the Village of Ossining or the Village of Briarcliff, most of this does not apply to you. So the unincorporated area services, we have, we're in the middle of a contract with the Village of Ossining for public safety, police protection services. They also serve down at our town court, to augment the court attendance down there while court is in session. We have a recreation IMA. We have our building inspector, as well as our planning and zoning boards and functions. Most of the engineering IMA that we pay to the Village of Ossining is also in the unincorporated area budget, as well as all of our stormwater management. And then the highway department takes care of our road maintenance and snow removal. And we talk a little bit about the special districts. Again, if you took a look at your tax bill, it could tell you which of these districts you fall into. Most folks in the unincorporated area, like I said, everyone falls into ambulance. Most also fall into street lighting, fire protection, and refuse. That's a combined tax rate there, as well as the sewer district. And then the North State Road Sewer District is something that was established probably about 20 years ago to capture the debt of having built the North State Road sewer, and that debt actually expires at the end of next year, I believe. So that fund's going to fall off very soon, which is very exciting. So here are some of the highlights. Here's what we're spending. And the good news is, even though we're spending a little bit more than we've spent in years past, because we have contractual obligations and the cost of everything goes up, our assessed value has also increased. So town-wide, which again is the Village of Briarcliff, or 91% of the Village of Briarcliff, Village of Ossining, and the unincorporated town-wide, our assessment has gone up about 2%, which is pretty significant. As far as the unincorporated area, 1.59% growth there. So we've continued to work on the 5-year capital plan, which we're going to go through a little bit in a moment. Something very exciting this year, we've actually added a new department to our budget, which was a first for me, the addition of Food Scrap Recycling Program Department. So in order to sort of capture all of the expenses in one place so that we can sort of judge for, grant purposes, how we're doing, and because we're actually going to be selling the bins and, their staff expenses, we actually got to add a department this year, which was kind of cool. Finally, we've restructured the parks and cemetery departments. This is something that we sort of have been doing on a trial basis going back to a little before the summer, I want to say. We had 2 full-time employees in the cemetery department who were only working in the cemetery. This board and the public, if you've been following along at home, if you're fascinated by this the way I am, when the town of Ossining ended their contract with Dale Cemetery Management Corporation back in 2015, there were several full-time employees who had been working at the cemetery that the town had to basically adopt in order to keep the cemetery functional. And all of our outdoor employees who are full-time have to be Teamsters. So we had to accept them into the collective bargaining unit. And we weren't really prepared to be adding 2 full-time Teamsters. So at the time, their salaries were much lower, their level of benefit was much lower, which was not great for them, but it's also not great for us, because that means they can't plow, and that means they have to stay in the cemetery. So something that we've been working on sort of on a trial basis is having those two gentlemen be able to work with our Parks Department a little bit more, and sort of flex the work that they're doing. We're paying them the slightly elevated rate from what they would otherwise get. And it's been working out very well. So we're still in final negotiations with the Teamsters for our upcoming contract, but it's looking like, we've heard from Superintendent Connolly and from our parks foreman that it's working out really nicely because they have a more flexible workforce that they can dispatch. And, the real test is going to be when the snow hits the ground. To have two extra trucks out there might be really helpful. So we're looking forward to making that a reality. And that has sort of changed the payroll a little bit, how we have to sort of manage between the general fund and the cemetery, but we'll see how it goes. Looks good so far. So we'll talk about the dreaded tax cap. So the first budget year for the tax cap was the 2012 budget. As the supervisor mentioned, we have always stayed under the cap since its implementation. So basically the rule is you get either 2% or the CPI, whichever is less. And so fortunately for us, this year the CPI is higher, so we got 2%. We also get a teeny weeny little growth factor, which is applied to the town as a whole, and that's based on what sort of brick and mortar construction we've had over the last year, and that's information that gets to the state via Fernando, our assessor, and how he puts things on the roll. We're also entitled to carry over what we didn't use for last year's budget, so that's $42,000, and we're under the cap by $88,629 across all funds, which we'll be able to use towards next year. So now going back to the unincorporated property owners is a little bit more about the special districts. So the average homeowner in the unincorporated area, based on the assessment of $385,071, is paying about $3,166 in town taxes. So that's the town general, unincorporated, and special districts. So it's a pretty good deal. For 25% of your tax bill to be that small, I think we're doing a pretty good job. So let's talk a little bit about the capital projects, because this is where pictures come in and it'll keep your attention. So every year we go through a 5-year sort of projection about what capital projects we're thinking about. And when we were discussing this a couple of days ago, we were trying to talk about, because whenever I talk about capital projects, I always say it's not real money, but that's not really true. We talk about matching our wish list with opportunities. So basically it's like a parking lot for all the projects that have been brought to our attention by our committees, by our residents, by our department heads, sort of things that they know that at some point we need to do, but are going to be a big ticket item. So we might not be able to do them that year. So we sort of keep all of these things in this parking lot in an order, as well as how we think we're going to pay for them. If it's something urgent, obviously we need to do it right away, but otherwise we wait. We wait for a good opportunity to come. A perfect example is the new senior electric bus that is coming soon. So we put into for CDBG funding to get this bus. We knew that the senior nutrition bus was really on its last wheel, and so we were going to be replacing it anyway. But we figured, hey, what the heck? If the senior program falls, within the low mod. Presumed benefit clientele classification. So we figured let's ask for that, and it happened to match something that an opportunity was available for. So that's sort of how we look at our capital project plan, and we have the ability to shift it. Nothing is set in stone. So a lot of times if we have a project on the roster and we just don't get around to it, it gets pushed down to the next year. So it's basically just a creative parking lot of all the things that we'd like to get done. But here's what's planned for this year. So this is really exciting. This is actually something that Bill Garrison, our recreation superintendent, had suggested to us. And then literally, I think like the very next day, we got communication from one of our vendors that they were having a very big sale on something very similar. And we were like, oh, we have the perfect place to put this. So this is out at Gerlach Park. It's next to where the basketball court had been, and for many years has not really been in great condition. So we've sort of been going back and forth about what to do with this part of the park. Should we just turn it all into a parking lot? Should we try to reestablish a basketball court? And after getting some feedback from the Recreation Advisory Board, we thought that this thing, which is called a MUGA, which is a multi-use gaming area, would be a great fit. So it's ordered, the money's encumbered. Unfortunately, because of the cold weather coming in, it's not going to be installed until early next year, but that's okay because no one's going to be playing outside over the winter, I hope, up there. Also at Gerlach, the second entrance road, which goes up to the parking lot, is in pretty bad condition. So we're looking to pave that as well as the remainder of the parking lot once the Muga is installed. And then this is a project that's been talked about for probably 5 years, and we just keep not getting around to it. But this year we decided we're definitely going to do it. The lighting structure for softball games at Gerlach Park is quite elderly. It's not very easy to use, or so we hear from our staff and the coaches who use it. And our electricity bill out there is very, very high. So if there's a way that we can figure out like a cost benefit analysis, I think we, could get this done much quicker. Because, the LED fixtures, I think Bill Garrison had talked to the board about this a little bit also. I think it would end up paying for itself over not too huge a span of time based on the decrease in electricity. So that's something else that we're hoping to do this year. Some small projects at Ryder Park, things that we can do in-house. This is the pavilion play area. So you might remember a couple years ago that was a basketball court. We decided it would be a nice amenity if, when folks rented the pavilion, they could have a play area over there that maybe had turf or something underneath, and then games that you would play at a picnic. So we're looking to work with one of our vendors who's on a contract, so we don't have to do bidding and all that, to line both that and then the Gaga pit that the Girl Scouts put in. The Gaga pit has only been used for a couple of months, but it's already pretty, the ground covering underneath is pretty beat up. So we're thinking about replacing that. Also at Ryder, continued work on the caretaker's cottage. This house is over 100 years old. Our staff worked on it pretty extensively this year to install, energy rated appliances and, put in insulation. We tried so hard to get someone else to take care of this for us. We talked to NYSERDA and Energize, NYPA, so many other organizations to try to say, hey, do you want to make us a model? Do you want to come in and insulate this house and put in blower door tests and, make us look really good? And they said it's just too small. They said it's really not worth the squeeze. And so we've been doing it little by little. But, just more proof of how, no matter how small the project, we still are constantly looking for different ways to finance it. And even though it didn't work out in this case, we're still, doing it the right way. Energy Star appliances and, trying to insulate everything and really protect the house. We are probably not going to have our staff work on it any further because we don't want to keep taking them away from the other jobs that they should be doing in the parks. At Engle Park, really the only thing we have planned for this year is additional kayak storage, so probably pouring something down over here just to allow more kayaks and not all jumbly ones like that. At Cedar Lane, we already have the money approved from DASNY to replace the dock. So we just have to wait for a good price on the dock, I think. And then the restrooms at the pavilion. So these were actually installed in 2003 by the Rotary Club and Louis Rinaldi and someone else dedicated this to the town. Unfortunately, because of vandalism, because of the fact that they didn't have locking doors for a long period of time, they have really just been beat up and they're very tired. And we get a lot of complaints. It's sort of an eyesore. And after having, invested so much time in making the pavilion look nice, we think it's probably time to upgrade the restrooms as well. Repaving the dog park road. It's really, really awful. We're going to try to do it this year out of our fund balance, but we decided to do Ryder instead. So this is next on the list, as well as some upgrades to the dog park. We received a donation from Friends of the Dog Park, so we want to make sure that that goes to the right place. And then McCarthy Drive, which Superintendent Connolly touched on a little bit. This is going to be one of the biggest projects that the town has undertaken in many, many years. So it's a road that our legal counsel ascertained needs to be dedicated to the town, so we have to bring it up to town standards. And it's very, very long, and it needs to be widened, and there's a lot of engineering. Fortunately for us, the Village of Ossining is our engineering partner on this. They're working on a water main project, so we're waiting on a Department of Health approval so that those things can happen simultaneously. And we're hoping, I think, to bid this out over the winter, I think is what Andy said, and get work started in the spring. So hopefully we're almost there. Yeah. And then finally, Dale Cemetery. This is a project for which the town borrowed money, I think about 2.5 years ago. And it literally has taken us this long to get to this point. But it went out for, as Pete mentioned, went out to bid. So there's a couple potential bidders waiting to come back, and hopefully they'll get this started and finished next year. The bane of our existence, the town website. We got very, very close to picking a vendor this fall, but we decided we're gonna give one more person a shot. So we're looking to get that launched in the first half of next year as well. So what could change? So the first thing is our Teamsters contract is very, very close. I think we're crossing our fingers that our meeting this week is going to be the last meeting. We can hopefully get that wrapped up very shortly.
I was crossing my fingers, but I was told that I was wrong.
Okay. In addition, we heard from Diane about the Unique Stewardship Program, so that's something that the board really needs to discuss. A couple other things on that list. The Energize Residential Program and the Equity Task Force, I'm going to sort of punt to Dana on those. And then finally, it's been brought up a couple times in the past couple of years if we should be budgeting any money for the Forest of Fears Hayride event. So those are conversations that the board still needs to have separate and apart from our departmental conversations. Do you want to
We're not allowed to say hayride anymore.
Forest of Fears, the Haunting at Cedar Lane event? So do you want to wait until or do you want to talk about that now?
I'm happy to talk about this right now. Sure. Just briefly, the Energized Residential Program was something that was introduced a number of years ago through Sustainable Westchester, and then the Energy Improvement Corporation took over through, similar to PACE financing, you can borrow money against the savings that you will realize on your energy bill. And it was something that has been supported by a number of municipalities directly, where staff from Energize will come into a community and really push out sort of a marketing campaign to get as many people as possible to consider energizing their home. And we think that there are a lot of benefits to overall to our community, but we would have to commit, I think it's either $12,000 or $15,000 to have that program come directly to Ossining. There are some changes that are happening right now in EIC, so I'm not 100% sure if this is going to stay under Energize/EIC or if it's going to shift. But in any case, I believe that it would require some kind of investment from us if we want them to come back to Ossining with a focused marketing and education program for our residents. The Equity Task Force is something that we've talked about creating through the town. The Village of Ossining has also expressed an interest in being involved in this. We explored the possibility of working with the school district already existing Equity Task Force, and I think that they already have an established group that's been working together for many years, and they're not as keen about bringing new members in at this point, although they continue to be very interested in outreach to the community. We talked about this as part of our effort to do a better job educating our community at large about issues of hate symbols like we had a noose or something that appeared like a noose in one of our town parks, which is what kind of galvanized people's energy around this issue to say, we need to really focus on this. Our community needs to take these issues seriously, and we need to come together to figure out a way not to put everything on our schools, but also to take responsibility for adults in our community to understand what these symbols really mean and how they affect people, and how we can do a better job of understanding and coming together as a community around this. So one of the things that try to be brief about this, but it's hard because it's complicated. There may be an opportunity to have some events around this, community engagement events around cultural competency, celebrating different kinds of cultures, which is why we might want to put some money into it to think about how we can do a better job bringing people in to talk about these issues, and also to pay educators to come in and help out to educate our adult population and community. So that's, again, another area where I think maybe, I'm just gonna say like between $1,000 and $2,000 might be appropriate to fund something like that. And then finally, so our Forest of Fears event was really successful this year. I think we had about 750 tickets that were sold. Is that approximately? It was we held it for 2 weekends. We partnered with the SPCA because one of the things that we found is getting sponsorships are easier when we have a cause celeb. And so we talked about how can we have this event. It's a very, very involved event with not only volunteers, but we have some people who are also paid to organize and set up the event and bring all the volunteers together and make sure that it gets executed, make sure that we have marketing, make sure that we have lighting, sound, and all the other things that make it such a great event. Originally, this event, when it was the Haunted Hayride, was conceived as an affordable alternative to Sleepy Hollow's event. And but what we found is it's engaged, I think, I want to say over 100 maybe, or 80 to 100 kids. Kids have gotten really involved, and they come out and similar to what you would do with a drama production, they get very involved in participating in this event. We think that it's a great protective factor to have kids involved in healthy, safe programs like this. And it's really, something that theoretically could be part of our recreation department, but right now is being run as a special event, and all of the concomitant pieces that are leading up to that. So right now, most of the funding for this has come from ticket sales and sponsorships, and we've done pretty well. And I think this year, we are looking at having enough surplus or proceeds that we are going to be able to make a nice donation back to the SPCA, which is what was the the ultimate goal, and also for everybody to have a great time and enjoy the event. So one of the things that was brought to my attention by Fern Quesada, who has run the event for a number of years, was that in Sleepy Hollow, they have a similar kind of event, and they have a budget of $38,000. I believe that's what she told me. So that's a very large budget. It's something that, what?
It was a little higher. The guy came. I was there when he was talking.
Okay, so it's a little higher, but they expend a lot of money. Now, I will say that I believe that when this event takes place in Sleepy Hollow, it's a great economic development driver. And because of the way we have this set up in the town park, I don't think that it has the same legs probably as the one in Sleepy Hollow in terms of what it brings to the community at large. I do think that it is, a great event for other reasons. I think it's a nice use of the park for a couple weekends, and leading up to it, during the months when we don't have a lot of activity in our park, and certainly in that part of the park, there is sharing that has to go on. There's no doubt. There are sacrifices that are made for everybody a little bit. Certainly some of our neighbors could probably speak about that. But, we do think that it's a good event. So I just really want to put it out to the board to consider if it's something that we want to make an effort to budget for. And I'm not actually making any particular case to do so with any amount attached. It's really just more food for thought if this is something that's worthy, and if so, what anybody might think an amount is that would be attached to that. So that's it for that slide. I'm sorry, did I take up all the rest of your time? That is much more
Is
succinct.
Energize residential program similar to Solarize Austining?
I guess so. I mean, yeah, they would come in, they would market, they would do a big push, a big outreach to get people to understand what the benefits would be to upgrade your home and make energy improvements to your home. that would then offset your energy bill. And if you can do that, basically to pay for the costs of the upgrades, then it's a win-win.
And that's different from the Con Ed program that calls you how? Con Ed always offers to come and check out your,
Well, they'll come in and check it out, but they won't actually make the upgrade. So they might give you. I think that you can probably do the $50 or free evaluation, but then if you actually want to make the improvements are what cost the money. That then it is looked at, and then there's like a list.
so
of,
they have, they're
vetted-
helping you finance it.
They don't help you finance it. The financing comes through through NYSERDA. Through the program, but they basically help you get through figure out how to get through that whole program, evaluate if you have contractors who are vetted, evaluate the contractors who would come in and do the work, and see that if the equation works, so and figure out how to do the borrowing against your energy bill, because you can pay for it on your energy bill, on your Westchester Power Con Ed bill.
All right, all things worth talking about.
Okay, we're almost there. Only one more slide. What's next? So, as I mentioned earlier, we have our meetings with department heads. These are public meetings. They're going to take place on the third floor in our conference room tomorrow and Friday. Unfortunately, two of our department heads had late breaking changes to their schedule, so we're going to have to reschedule John and Fernando. Next Tuesday at the courthouse, we're going to be holding the public hearing on the 2020 tentative budget. We have to talk about this because right now we have a different event planned for that night. We're going to do our volunteer recognition. So we have to talk about rescheduling a work session because we certainly do need to have another work session on this before we adopt the budget. And then again, the planned adoption date is December the 10th. So if you want to take a look at any of the budget documents, you can go to townofossining.com and then click on Budget Office on the left-hand side. That'll open up all of the tentative budget documents as everything currently stands. Typically, what we do from this point forward is if there's any change to the tentative budget in the adopted budget, we keep an Excel spreadsheet of those things. I mean, typically they're not more than 20 or 30, but that's something that we can share with the public as well once that's done. But unless there are any other questions from the board, that is the end of the presentation.
Thank you very much, and thanks for all the hard work that you've done in getting us ready for budget season.
And Dale too,
And absolutely,
And also Dale.
who I did mention at the beginning.
not to mention Dale.
She's not here, but she's here in spirit. She's probably upstairs. Okay, so with that, I open it up to the board for discussion. I've kind of given you a little bit of hand tipping in terms of what I think that we might want to consider adding, but if there's anything specific that you want to discuss or want to put any numbers to some of the things we talked about, what your thoughts are, I'd appreciate hearing from you all.
I do think that the Forest Affairs, I've been watching the kids really participate, and I don't know how we make that part of our recreation. But a lot of kids really do take full advantage of it. A lot of volunteers donate their time, kind of similar to the way coaches would with teaching them how to properly use tools and be safe and design things. So I think it's been a good program. I don't know where it's going to fit in our budget, but I think it's a definitely conversation. The unique area is also a conversation. So, but I want to go through the rest of it.
Okay,
So
all right.
How much did you say Sleepy Hollow put into their program?
about 38,000, I think.
38,000 approximately, although you said it was more, but I'm pretty sure that's what
I
I was
think it was
told.
38. I thought you said 30, and it was more.
Did you remember? Because we actually requested it.
Yeah, we got the exact number. It's somewhere in that neighborhood, but I mean, also, I haven't seen what it is that they're doing with that money, but I don't think our expenses are
Not-
commensurate.
Right.
I think our expenses are much lower. So, I mean, unless it was going to be a much elevated version of what we're doing now, I don't think that $40,000 would be anywhere near appropriate.
Oh, no, we're not putting $40,000.
Even if you wanted to, I'm just saying.
As far as the equity task force, I think it would
Yeah,
be a good idea to put some money aside for a facilitator, if not some kind of community event. I don't know what the number is, but something like that.
And I
That's
mean,
a
there's a
need.
couple of thoughts that we had about facilitators. I mean, we talked about possibly, because we had a great experience with somebody who runs, who does sessions from the county,
Right.
does through the EAP program, who actually ran our cultural competency.
Yeah, she was great.
And we thought that she might be available. We're not 100% sure if we could have access to her. We talked about getting one of the teachers at the high school or a couple of teachers at the high school to come and do that. Could have just be a one-off. I don't know if they'd be willing or interested in facilitating. And then the other thing is I just learned about is that there's a program in, I think, Larchmont Mamaroneck called Cure. I'm not exactly sure what the acronym is, but I just learned about it and I started looking a little bit at their website and it seemed like it was a similarly tasked organization that was, again, trying to adjust the same sorts of thing. And I think actually I sent an email the other day asking if they might be able to share a little bit more information about how they formed. And I think that it's, it's all volunteer, but even if we had, whether or not we have some person that would help us to, what did you? Facilitate, thank you. I was going to say administer, but it's really facilitate. I think that, we might want to consider if we want to bring some people in for education, possibly facilitation, and possibly if there are any other type of events that we wanted to consider. And I don't think, again, that it needs to be a large amount, but I think by putting something in there, that would be helpful. So, again, I was thinking in the sort of $1,000 to $2,000 range, something along those lines.
That's definitely an important thing to put that money into, so it's not a very big amount.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. A couple grand is
Well worth it.
And so where's everybody else about the Forest of Fears?
I'm comfortable putting money in it. I think the number is
Is
what
the
we gotta figure
question,
out,
yeah.
So
It's a bigger conversation.
I was gonna say alternately, and I don't know if this is the same thing you were gonna say. Alternately, what we could do is say we're going to commit so much of in-kind services. So in other words,
So much staff time.
yeah, exactly, so much staff time. And if we are going to commit the staff time versus having to recoup that from ticket sales, then could be a significant commitment of dollars in time. That's in other words, that's being offset. So then our staff isn't able to do something else because they're committing their time to working on that project.
So how many hours did,
What I was going to say instead is, so we're meeting with our Parks Department tomorrow to go over the budget. What I will do is I will make copies of my spreadsheet that sort of shows like all the expenses and sort of tracks like how we've done this year.
how much time they spent there?
And you can sort of take a look and make a judgment based off of those numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds great.
And then ticket sales, how did they do overall this year? I haven't seen a report.
Right. And I will tell you that this year, I think that they did pretty darn well in ticket sales. They had 4 good weather nights out of 4. That doesn't always happen.
It was a little cold. Trust me. No,
No,
but
I know
yeah,
it
I
was-
agree.
But I'm just
It
saying,
wasn't raining.
it was a little cold, but it was October. I mean, it's like supposed to be a little cold, I mean, it was, it snowed last year or whatever. So I'm just saying, if it's, or rained last year. So if it's pouring rain, and a lot of people pay at the gate or pay at the last minute, wait until the last minute to go online and pay because they want to see what the weather's like, because we don't refund tickets. Sometimes if we had 2 weekends and the first weekend was bad weather, we'll put you on the second weekend. But again, you're still going to have reduced total numbers of sales. So,
Okay, I think we could also do a little bit better job of advertising it, so it might help.
well, if you talk to the marketing director would say, then you need to spend money on marketing because you can't get more if you don't spend more. So, and again, I'm sure you'll hear that from a lot of marketing people because that is, usually an equation for success is if you spend more on your marketing outlets and you do paid advertising in magazines and newspapers and on, radios or whatever, then you're bound to get more reach and you're more likely to get higher ticket sales. So, there's so much you can do with low cost advertising outlets, but if you do look at some of the other,
So maybe it's worth it to look into that too.
right, so those are the other kinds of things that you would end up spending money on.
The only other thing I would say about the budget sort of holistically, and, Councilwoman Feldman, you've been through this a number of times now, you guys are, Jackie's been with us for a couple of years, but,
Councilwoman Shaw has also
Councilwoman
been,
Shaw,
always attends, and
she went
is
to
also
all the
directed
budget
by- has been
meetings,
on the
even
Liaisons
before
Budget
she was
Advisory Board.
official, yes.
She's quite familiar with
But I'm
this.
still classifying her in the newbie column for these purposes.
And a newbie column.
Yeah. Because the town's budget is so small, it's basically a rollover budget with some tweaking. So, for example, we look at like we look at the water bills in the Parks Department and we say, oh, gee, we better budget a little bit more this year because we're using a lot of water. And then we have conversations about how can we try to use less water. So are there different, different times of day and different things like that. So, aside from what we discussed tonight, which is really the capital projects that we're using fund balance for and occasionally borrowing, and the food scrap program, there's not a whole lot of new, going on. So, I mean, as far as the budget meetings are concerned, that's why not a whole lot changes because we're pretty tight as it is. So, certainly if any ideas come up, and that's why, I started off with saying we ask our department heads, hey, do you have any goals? Do you have any new programs? I mean, we're not changing a lot from last year's budget, certainly. So again, if there are ideas on ways that we could do that, I'm all ears. But
And I mean, I will say that the other part that we always ask the department heads is, okay, so it looks like you underspent here, you overspent there, and a lot of times if you underspent, what's the reason for that? Is that something that we could be, budgeting lower or higher? There is, a little bit of, craftsmanship that has to go into figuring out how can we continue to do this work, maintaining, our facilities, maintaining our infrastructure, as well as providing, opportunities for economic development, all these things within the world of the tax cap. And what you don't want to do is see that you had a savings one year, but you might have an anticipated expenditure the next year, cut way back on that budget line, only to find out that now you don't have enough to cover it the next year. So there's a lot of things that we look to do to kind of smooth the budget and make sure that we have enough money to cover our negotiated contracts, as well as to continue to maintain what we have in there within the tax cap. And, as we mentioned, we do try to look for every opportunity to find funds from outside. And what I didn't talk about, and we didn't talk about, probably should have, I just remembered, is that there was an increase to the county sales tax, which we're getting a portion of. Now that, just so you know, does not go for town general, does not go into the 100, it goes into the unincorporated only, which is fungible between highway and the unincorporated, but that's the only that's where that funding applies, and we budgeted very conservatively. The county, I think, gave us an estimate of maybe $300,000. We're only budgeting 50 because we don't necessarily know that any of this stuff. I mean, I don't think that we're close yet to what their estimates were for the remainder of this year since the increase went into effect. And we'd rather budget low and find out that we made a mistake in that direction than find out the other way around. So, there's a little tiny bit of wiggle room. We probably could add in a couple more bucks from that for unincorporated budget purposes, but other than that, not really a lot.
I'm personally hoping with all these new trucks, we have less repairs expenses.
Yes, well, that is, actually, I think
And
we're
with the
already
electric
seeing-
vehicles, we'll have less gas, so I'm hoping that'll
We are really
help
seeing
us
that already.
do some of the other things that we'd like to do.
Yeah. If our new vehicles could come in good shape from the start. They don't always come in, but they're all warranted, so they're all getting,
And then a plug for the census, our portion of the
absolutely.
increase in the
Sales tax.
Sales tax, thank you.
Is directly
Is
impacted.
directly linked to the correct count of people in our community. So if you know that, there's, your neighbors are anxious about being counted for whatever reason, explain it to them that, it's, what do they say, just in federal funding alone is $2,500 per person. That doesn't count any of our grant opportunities, doesn't count any of our, percentage of this
Sales tax.
sales tax, thank you, it's late. And any number of other formulas, it's really important that we work together as best we can to make sure all of our community is counted, for the benefit of us all. We were undercounted last time, and that just puts it on the shoulder.
The town actually wasn't, just so you know.
Doubtful.
No, actually, that's true. The town was undercounted. That's according
Okay,
to county.
Okay,
But that doesn't mean that it's important that the village is fully counted because that also impacts for town general and all of that funding. So it's important. I'm not just saying again, it's just the nature of the beast.
I
but
think,
there's a lot,
I think
there's
at
gonna be
this
much
point in
easier ways
time,
this year.
I think at this point in time in our, community, in our, climate, that there are a lot more people that don't want to be counted than there were 10 years ago. So it's important to talk to everybody about being counted.
All right, there's something funny. Okay, so anyway, that's that. I think that's it. Is there anything else further? Budget work session? Any comments from anybody on the board? Any suggestions? Any ideas? Otherwise, we'll just go.
Well, I'm looking forward to going over it line by line, for the
department.
next few days.
All right, fantastic. With that, I think we're going to move on to our next work session item, which is our comprehensive plan discussion. So we've been preparing a request for proposals for a consultant to complete our comprehensive plan or to lead us and work with us on our comprehensive plan with sustainability elements. The project will be funded in part by the Climate Smart Communities Grant Program Title 15 of the Environmental Protection Fund through the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. We've been working in close partnership with our project manager from the DEC and Tiffany Zazula from Pace University's Land Use Law Center to craft this document. I look forward to discussing this with the board, and also we are ready to start the process of soliciting for members of the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee. So we have prepared for the board's review and outline for letters of interest from community members. I'm now going to turn it over to Victoria Caffarelli, who's been managing the grant, to take us through some of the highlights of the RFP and the letter of interest, and then I will open it up to the board colleagues for comments.
Okay, thank you. This has been the product of reviewing a lot of other requests for proposals from some other communities over the past couple of weeks. And so I'm just going to kind of walk you through what we've put together here in this draft document right now. You start with an introduction, something that I just want to mention about how this plan will be structured based solely upon the grant that we've received. It's a comprehensive plan with sustainability elements. The DEC has defined a number of sustainability elements that we have to address, which is detailed in this document. But also we are going to be receiving certification under another action under Climate Smart Communities, specifically relating to bikeability and walkability. So something we had discussed is having a dedicated section of the plan that directly addresses bikeability and walkability in the community, which will kind of get us these dual points under Climate Smart Communities certification, which we definitely want. Now moving on to the second section, which is some background information on our community. So we're kind of giving an introduction to these potential consultants to our community, some basic census information, as we just discussed in detail, as well as some background information about our existing comprehensive plan, which I know, as you all know, was adopted in 2002 with updates in 2015. Something that we noted here, which I think is important for any potential consultant to understand, is that although some of the recommendations that are in the comprehensive plan from 2002 may still be relevant to the town today. The updates that were done in 2015 did not update the base data that the comprehensive plan is based on. So things like census, things like population, things like all of those really important data points are based on data from 2000, 1999, which obviously the town has changed incredibly in the past 20 years. And it's really important that we ensure that moving forward with this new comprehensive plan, we're addressing the new base data, new base information for our community as it stands today. Then moving along, we have a long narrative of some recent planning efforts that the town has undertaken, as well as some of our community partners that are really relevant to what the comprehensive plan will encompass. Some of the highlights are our Millwood Austining Go Bike and Pedestrian Plan, which of course will tie very closely to the bikeability and walkability section of our comprehensive plan, our townwide tree inventory, the work we've been doing with Cornell's Climate Adaptive Design Studio, which has really opened our eyes to the reality of what climate change is going to do for our community and how we can use some of the data that exists out there provided by Columbia University, Scenic Hudson, that shows us what the projections, sea level rise and flooding projections are for our community, which really are very humbling data points to take a look at and think about as we're planning for our community over the next couple of years.
And I just want to stop you here for one quick second just to point something out, which is that while you know, a lot of the planning and zoning thought and direction that's part of a comprehensive plan is specifically for the unincorporated area, all of our town parks are also incorporated into this comp plan. So it really is kind of a conglomeration or a mishmash of unincorporated as well as town general.
Yes, that's definitely correct. And that kind of points to the next item here is the addressing the homestead, non-homestead discussion that's kind of come up over the past few years due to our ability to keep our tax roll at 100% assessment. That definitely impacts not just the unincorporated town, but also the town general because our assessor assesses for the entire town. Moving along, we, note, and throughout this document, you'll see links. I tried to hyperlink to a lot of these resources so that whoever's reviewing this document to give us a proposal really has everything right at their fingertips. So we have links to the Green Austining website, the Climate Action Plan that they developed in 2012, which has a lot of really great information. We have links to the most recent enrollment projections from the school district, which they just published last week and discussed at their school board meeting. As well.
Just to back up, besides Green Austining, also the Environmental Advisory Committee was instrumental in the open space inventory.
Yes, that's something that
That's
they've
also
been very interested in.
mentioned
As well as a link to the town code. We're suggesting that any potential consultant review the code changes that have been made over the past 5 years, not just in zoning and planning changes, but also some of the larger policy shifts that the town board has taken over these past couple of years. I think it really speaks to what the town board visions for the future and how we've been operating and how we will likely operate going forward. And of course, we can certainly add to this list narrative here that we have of some projects that have been going on in our community, and we can certainly provide to any consultant any additional information that they might request that might help them give us a more accurate proposal. The one thing that we haven't discussed too much, but is really important to note, we actually have 2 Climate Smart Communities grants in process right now, both of which we are partnering with PACE Land Use Law Center on. The comprehensive plan, obviously, and the community engagement associated with it, but also PACE approached us a few years ago to kind of be a model community for their Healthy Communities initiative that they're working with the DEC on to incorporate some of the Plan for Health Task Force recommendations into the Climate Smart Communities program. So the Climate Smart Communities program addresses a wide range of policies that communities across New York State can take into consideration when addressing climate change, but the folks at PACE really want to see that program incorporate the tenets of a healthy community into that. So we received grant funding with their assistance. They wrote that grant, where they will be taking a look at 2 things in our community. One, smart growth along North State Road and some zoning change recommendations, as well as a complete streets policy that is really going to be very comprehensive. A lot of complete streets policies just say, we want complete streets. Our complete street policy is really going to give us step-by-step instructions of how we can accomplish those goals. So these projects are going to be happening concurrently. So we noted this here that whatever's happening with our comprehensive plan is also going to relate to this other project that PACE has been working with us on. So we're hoping that those two can align very well. So that's the general background information. Next, we can move into what we see the scope of services being. Something that's important to note, because we have a grant for this, we have worked very closely with the DEC to line out exactly what we need to accomplish for this grant. There are specific milestones, specific program goals that we have to meet, and I have to report on a quarterly basis to the DEC how we're accomplishing step 1, step 2, step 1.1, step 1.2. So we're going to be attaching to the RFP the work plan that's encompassed in our grant contract, so we're not repeating ourselves, and we're being very precise as to what we're going to need a consultant to assist us with so that we meet all of those goals.
Is that available for the public to review, that same document?
Yeah, we're working on putting together, I've been working with our webmaster to set up a comprehensive plan page on the website, which will have the RFP posted when it's complete and published. We can certainly post the work plan as well, and any other documents relating to this process. Okay?
Sorry.
No problem. And then also I'm including links to the Climate Smart Communities program. It's very specific about what sorts of deliverables you need to give them to earn certification under these actions. So I'm also directly linking to their website so that they know exactly what we're going to need from them to get the points that we need to get the grant. And also, we included some links to some of these tools that I discussed, like the Hudson River Flood Mapper, as well as the school district's enrollment projections. We're asking that within their scope, they're going to utilize some of these tools in making recommendations or, compiling this plan. I've also included a link to the the town hall meeting that we had on October 15th, introducing the comprehensive plan to the community. I think that really showcased some of the concerns of the community and what they're looking to get out of this process. So we're encouraging any potential consultants to view that meeting so that they really know what the Austin community is looking for from this process.
I just want to go back to just highlight that consultants to develop a comprehensive plan with sustainability elements, and you mentioned what was highlighted again in the grant, which is including but not limited to supporting alternative modes of transportation, promoting smart growth principles in land use policies, conserving natural areas, promoting a healthy and safe community, and fostering equity. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to highlight those for any.
Yeah, so those are the most basic ones that we have to include of sustainability elements. One of the tasks in our work plan that we're hoping the consultant as well as PACE will be able to assist us with is working with the community to define what sustainability means for Ossining. What are the sustainability elements that we know we need to address in our plan? All of those are great and are kind of a broad brushstroke for most communities in New York State, but Ossining is Ossining, and we have specific needs. So part of that process will be adding to that list so that we address all of the sustainability elements that are really relevant to our community. Okay. And of course, we're expecting the consultant to work very closely with town staff as well as our project manager from the DEC on this grant, the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee, once it's comprised, business owners, stakeholders, they're getting into a big meeting of lots of people who are going to be very interested in getting involved. And then the rest is mostly administrative things, specific items that we want included in the proposal. Something we discussed is not being a little bit more broad in terms of these requirements. Some communities are very specific. We want a letter that's 1 to 3 pages. Then we want this that's 2 to 5 pages. And I think that there's an opportunity here to see how the consultant will choose to organize their proposal. And that is something that we should consider when we're deciding what consultant to work with, how well they can really put together something for us, because that's obviously the end goal here. So it's a little bit more broad, just including the work program, as well as references to our work plan through the DEC, a project timeline, total costs, their qualifications, the individuals with the firm that are going to be assigned to the project, similar projects that they've completed, references, a representative work sample, and then we have a number of insurance requirements that have been defined by our insurance representative, Jim Duffy. excellently. Something else I just want to note is something that we've seen in other communities that have recently completed comprehensive plans, especially like the town of Newcastle did a really great job, I think, of this, is presenting the comprehensive plan online in a way that's easy to look at, easy to reference, easy to see how you're making progress on the goals you've defined in the plan. As opposed to something that just kind of sits on the shelf and is this big daunting document that nobody really wants to look at. So we have included in here that the product that we're expecting the consultant to deliver should be in a form that is easily accessible to not only us and town staff, but also the public, business owners, community members, whoever wants to see it. It should be easy to look at, it should be easy to understand, and not something that's kind of boring to look at. And past the insurance, we outlined, I'm reviewing a couple other communities' requests for proposals. I thought some criteria that we should consider, because this is not a formal bid or a normal bid that we usually do where we have to choose a bidder based on the lowest price. Of course, price is something that we are going to be taking into consideration, but there are also some other important criteria to consider, like their qualifications, their demonstrated understanding of the topics to be addressed in the comprehensive plan, a record of past performance, demonstrated ability to work with professional staff, boards, and other community partners, demonstrated ability to complete work on time, demonstrated innovative approach to planning. You know, we want this to be an innovative plan for us, as well as experience with the Climate Smart Communities program. It's kind of very intricate, and I think if we can find a consultant that's worked with that program before, that's really going to be a benefit to us as we seek not only certification under that program, but also to complete our grant requirements. We also noted that, and this is something that the town board can decide once we see what sorts of responses we get, if we'd like to hold interviews for potential consultants once we receive their proposals. As well as I'll be accepting questions from any potential consultants up until the Friday before the deadline. We've set the deadline right now at December 20th. So until the week before, I'll also be posting the responses to the questions I receive from consultants online, so the public will be able to see what consultants are asking, and also so all potential consultants have the equal opportunity to see what other people are asking and get all the information that's being presented to anybody. And we are hoping to not get too many printed copies to lie around of this proposal. So we're asking for 5 bound printed copies, as well as in PDF, so that we can share it amongst ourselves, share it with anybody else that we may need to, and keep it forever and ever and ever. So that's about it on the RFP. Like I said, we'll have the appendix of the work plan from the DEC, as well as a second appendix will be the scope of work that PACE will be doing. We're hoping that whatever consultant we select will budget to not only support PACE's efforts, but also supplement it in other ways. It may not necessarily be a whole number of extra meetings, but if they have innovative ways to reach people online or any sorts of other engagement efforts, we're hoping that they will incorporate that into their proposal. So we want to make sure they understand what PACE is doing so that they can see how they can supplement that to our best interest.
So I just wanted to highlight that with our continued work with Climate Adaptive Design Studio at Cornell, we want to make sure that the consultant is going to rely on data and strategies such as the Columbia University's Hudson River Flood Impact Decision Support System mapper. And there are other maps as well to really take a look, especially when they're like considering some, our parks and our sections along our waterfront that are town-owned property, that they're really looking at that and what the impact will be in the next 20, 30, 60 years, as well as the Austin School District enrollment projections and townwide tree inventory. So all of those things coming together, I think they're important. As you mentioned, there are a number of other resources that you've already shared directly, but we want to make sure that they're also consulting all of those very important documents for guidance and direction as we move forward, and understanding how they're planning to work with those documents and data analysis. Okay, so I'd just like to open it up to the board for comments about, or do you want to talk a little bit about the Did you guys have a chance to review the call for applications?
Yeah,
I didn't see that. All right, but my question about this one is, one comment.
What are you pointing to? What's this one?
The one we just
RFP?
discussed for
Okay,
the last
RFP.
5 minutes?
Okay,
Okay.
just checking.
this one, yes.
Okay.
I'm
anyway.
ready.
One, the Cornell students did a very in-depth deep dive into our community as a part of their thing. They did not want to put a planner out. They didn't want to take the work of another planner when they were becoming them, but they did suggest that they would be open to sharing their results and their results of their deep dive with a potential planner. But my real question is this enough time? It's a very in-depth proposal that we're looking for, and is that enough of a window to give somebody time enough to, it seems a little short.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly discuss extending it. I think we were trying to keep it before the holidays. We did share this with Tiffany at Pace, who's had a lot of experience dealing with these sorts of proposals. And, I asked her if she thought it was an okay time frame, and she seemed to think it was all right. We can certainly, if that's something that the board would like to consider, we're open to it. But I think it would be nice if we'd be able to kind of hit the ground running in January and have all of our ducks in a row, ready to go at that point, but, certainly. open to it.
It just seems
Yeah.
like a very in-depth proposal. There's a lot of pieces, there's a lot of research to be done to look into it. There are holiday, there's Thanksgiving. I just want to make sure that companies have enough time and they don't go, wow, I don't have time to really look at that. Let me not apply to this. So I'm just thinking I'd like to make sure that we have a good
Okay.
assortment
I mean,
of.
we're definitely willing to, I think we should, we can absolutely consider extending it. We'll talk a little bit more about what a good amount of time is, given all the holidays. Just a good suggestion.
Yeah.
Anybody have any thoughts? The other thing that I wanted to mention is that we have, solicited some responses also from Tiffany, as well as a couple of other folks from the DEC consultant, as well as our council and our insurance. We've gotten guidance from our insurance agent. And but one of the things that we do want to make sure that we address is that we understand that we're doing this kind of alongside at the same time as the Village of Austin is working on their comp plan. And certainly if there are opportunities for us, and PACE is also working with the Village of Austin, so we're trying not to duplicate efforts here. If there is information that can be shared that's that's overlapping, and if there are considerations that the villages, I think that we want to make sure that our consultant is working to look at and be thoughtful about what's happening in the village. Obviously, we all affect one another. These, depending on where we live or pay taxes or whatever, all of these things overlap. We know school districts overlap town lines and village lines, and we want to make sure that we are cognizant of that, and that the consultant, as part of the RFP process, also responds to that and kind of gives us a suggestion of how we can make that work going forward.
I have one other actual question. We're working with our census numbers, but in theory, the census numbers will be changing. So are we going to kind of hold off work with the new census numbers? That's a picture of our community now. Or are we going to start with the older ones and transition it? How is that going to look?
I think that's going to be a decision for the consultant. I'm certainly not an expert in compiling base information for a comprehensive plan. We are going to hire an expert to
Right,
help
okay.
make those decisions. The information that I linked to in the RFP is actually the 2017 American Community Survey data for Ossining, which is I don't really know the details of it, but I think it's
Somewhat updated.
Like a mini
They do
census?
They
Yeah,
do
it's-
like the in-between
yeah, I think it
surveys.
has some sampling, and where the census is an actual count, they'll incorporate some sampling data into those numbers. I think that's going to be a decision for the consultant where we'll kind of fall on that.
All right.
Okay.
It looks pretty comprehensive. It looks good.
Just to piggyback on what Liz was talking about, as far as the request for letters of interest, and this may be a question for council, is there a way to solicit demographic information so that we can have like a real cross-section of the community?
Are you talking about for the comprehensive plan, the committee?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's something that we can incorporate into like a hiring practice, but I think that's, when we crafted these questions, we're trying to see, first question, just how long have you lived here? Why did you choose to come to Ossining? And then one of the things that was actually noted by the community at our October 15th meeting is something to think about. Are people with professional qualifications to kind of bring to the table? That's really important. So we directed some of those questions to see what sort of organizations are you a part of? What sorts of, do you have any specific professional affiliations or professional experience that you can kind of bring to the table? So it doesn't really maybe necessarily address demographics, but I think it will help us make sure that we're bringing together a good compilation of viewpoints, of expertise to the table.
And a group of committed individuals who are
Correct.
willing to put in the time that it would take to be part of a steering committee that's serious, that takes the task at hand seriously.
Right, and to one of the questions we're asking people to hopefully address in a letter of interest, and something else that Tiffany actually made the suggestion, I think that's a really good suggestion. You'll see here, it's kind of structured as 4 different questions, even though they're, I could see it as a letter. A suggestion she had was to make this a fillable form on our website, so it's a little bit easier for people to fill out. They don't necessarily have to compile a really fancy Word doc on some letterhead they're going to put together. They can actually just go on the website and answer these questions right there, which I think is a really great suggestion. And, we're also hoping people can kind of highlight if they have a particular interest that they want to focus on, so we can make sure that we're bringing all these different perspectives to the table through this process.
On that note, I'm still a little unclear because our building department and our zoning is just the unincorporated area and everything else is our entire town. I'm a little unclear if that gets separated, if everybody's talking about the building and zoning for the unincorporated area, and I kind of feel like it's we wear 2 hats as a board, and I'm still uncomfortable with the idea that it's one plan for 2 jobs or 2 hats. So
Well, I think you
want to
kind
make
of
sure that the
yeah.
unincorporated area is represented well on the, in what the unincorporated area is going to look like.
Correct. I mean, we can certainly add to this if you'd like. We can certainly add if we want people to put their address. Something that was also a suggestion from the community, and I think is a valid point to have, is to have also local business owners who may not necessarily be residents of Ossining, but it might be good to have the perspective of a business owner at the table. So we might not want that person to put their address if they don't necessarily live here. So we can add a question here if they could indicate their address or the address of their business, so we can see where these people are living, and we can make sure that we're getting a balance of who lives where. But I think as you're addressing, we do wear these different hats all the time, and sometimes it's hard to take one off for one conversation and put it back on for the other. So in this plan, especially when it comes to our parks or assessor or tax receiving, or even some of our general administration grants that we want to seek, that's something that falls under the town general operations. Inevitably, the plan is going to have to address not only things that are only relevant to the unincorporated area, but also the town as a whole.
So I'm wondering if we could find somebody who's worked with a situation such as ours, so I can understand how that kind
I mean, we aren't the
Consultant.
only town
that's
in
what
New
I'm
York
saying.
State
Yeah,
that
that
has
operates
Right, so I'm
this way.
saying, can we find
villages
one who has
and
worked on a comprehensive plan?
unincorporated areas.
Right, so
you know.
maybe there's one that's done a recent comprehensive plan, and we can look at, how they approached wearing the 2 hats and what that looked like. I would like to see that.
Yeah.
So maybe we could find somebody who's done that, if possible.
Yeah, well, hopefully they'll list it on their most recent jobs that they've worked on, so we can delineate that, yeah.
Fantastic. So, no other thoughts besides, I think that we discussed how we could maybe address that. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
100%.
no, I
I
think
mean,
that's fine with me.
okay. All right.
And I just want to note, for anybody that's watching at home, we're hoping to kind of keep a similar time frame in terms of the responses for the consultant as well as the committee, with the deadline being December 20th, before the holidays. We certainly won't be reaching out to anybody for any sort of interviews, if we do decide to hold interviews for the committee members as well, until January and everybody's back to reality. But that's sort of the time frame that we're looking at here. And again, if the board wishes to extend that a little bit into early January, I think that is certainly worth discussing.
Okay. I agree.
All right.
Thank you very much. That was very nice. Very comprehensive.
Fantastic.
On point.
Okay, so with that, thank you everybody for your feedback, and anything that we discussed tonight, I think we'll follow up with, and will be compiled into the final draft RFP, so we can add a resolution. I do think that we're going to be meeting with some community members. I don't know, I haven't heard back yet if that's happening or not, who want to have some input into the RFP. Maybe.
Are we allowed to speak?
Well, I mean, we're not opening this up for public comment, but I did say that I would meet with some of the community members, and I'm one of the board members, so that it isn't a public meeting, who had been particularly concerned about the River Knoll project, and that they would get to give some input into what the comprehensive plan process, and you know, if you guys had any input into the RFP that you wanted to share with us, we're certainly, you know, open for that, and it will also be a resolution on board meeting, you know, a board meeting, and there's always comment on any proposal that we have before we vote on it. So if there's anything that you wanted to talk about, I did speak to you about a potential date this week to meet with you, and I haven't heard back, so hopefully I will hear back soon. And with that, I think that that's it. For that, I'd like to ask for a motion to adjourn into executive session, and I can talk to you offline before we go into executive session.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry, for personnel. Okay. Anybody opposed? No? Okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. We will have, we'll be meeting with the board and department heads to go through each of the budgets tomorrow from 12 to 3 and Friday from 1 to 5 in the third floor conference room. Our next regular meeting is scheduled for next Tuesday, November 26th at the courthouse, when we'll also be holding the public hearing on the 2020 budget. We hope to see you then. Thanks, everybody.